Yes. George, welcome. So you can unmute yourself and then.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Okay, I want to thank everyone for coming to participate in this event. I am George Mbaka Ebechwe, an environmental scientist by profession and human rights activist and advocate of the Southern Cameroon's plight for independence. I will be sharing with you the story of Southern Cameroon's people, which is a land that covers a total surface area of about 43,000 square kilometers. And we have a population of over 10 million people. Absolutely speaking, I won't say we are a minority, but we are people under incomplete decolonization. Please, next slide. Thank you. I will be sharing with you the brief background of Southern Cameroon. I will also talk about the definition of self-determination and Southern Cameroon as a people, then the erasure of Southern Cameroon's institutions. And to the left, you will see the map of Southern Cameroon with all the states in Southern Cameroon. And to the right of it, you see La République du Cameroon, and to the left, you see Nigeria as our neighbors. Next slide, please. Okay, the history of Southern Cameroon dates back as far as 5th BCE, when Cameroon was discovered and colonized by Germany in 1884. The Germany actually laid some nice foundations in Cameroon, but could only stay briefly because when they were defeated in World War I, the League of Nations fragmented Cameroon into pieces, and the La République of Cameroon, which is known as Republic of Cameroon today. Most people know of Cameroon, but that is actually the name of the part that was given to the French during the fragmentation, took the lion's share of Cameroon. Then another part was the British Northern Cameroons and the British Southern Cameroons. The rest of Cameroons were given to other neighbors like Equatorial Guinea, Central African Republic, Congo, and the rest. And you hear of Southern Cameroon, most people will think that it is a name based on the geography, but it is actually not the case because like from the first map I showed in my presentation, you will actually see that Southern Cameroon is located west to Cameroon. And the name Southern Cameroon is actually British Southern Cameroon because British had two parts of Cameroon, the British Northern Cameroon and the British Southern Cameroon. And today we prefer to call it Ambazonia. Then British Southern Cameroons as a people actually were jointly managed with the Eastern Nigeria at the Enugu House of Assembly. And during this time, the Biafrans dominated the Southern Cameroonians, and there was gross marginalization that led to the people of Southern Cameroon quitting the House of Enugu to reconvene in Boya. Before we proceed, I will also like to talk about self-determination a bit. I know most of my colleagues have already given a definition of self-determination. And self-determination is a principle that is embodied in the United Nations Charter. And most of these countries are signatories to this United Nations Charter. It is a right, it is the right of people to freely determine their political status and pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. Self-determination has different outcomes depending on the root causes and the driving forces. Self-determination is included in the United Nations or the human rights, is included in the International Covenant on Human Rights and in the Vienna Declaration Program of Action, and it emphasizes that it should be an integral part of human rights law and thus has a universal application. What is the argument I'm making here? When a country is already a signatory to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, by implication, self-determination has already touched the constitution of that country. So we don't longer talk of integrity, territorial integrity in this case. So self-determination is a principle that actually breaks a constitution of a country. You will see the evolution of Cameroon from the German Cameroon right up to 1961, when the British Northern Cameroon was joined to Nigeria, and British Southern Cameroon was supposed to gain its independence, and at this time it was given only the option of either gaining independence by joining Nigeria or gaining independence by joining Cameroon. So I will also argue here that the right of self-determination of the Southern Cameroon people is a fundamental right by virtue of its universal application as well as a constitutional right, because in 1972, though the two countries wanted to come together in a union in which there is no treaty that exists, or there is no agreement that brought these two countries together that exists, as far as I know, in the archives of the United Nations or anywhere in the world. When they drafted a federal constitution, I will call it a draft constitution, and this draft constitution was tampered with, and the name of Cameroon was reversed to, instead of Federal Republic of Cameroon, it was reversed to Republic of Cameroon, which is the name of the country that came together to join with Southern Cameroon as two equal parties to associate with Southern Cameroon. So at this time, the La République du Cameroon already left the Union. We will also see here Southern Cameroon as a people. We will also see here that when they left the eastern half of Enugu, they reconvened in Boya. They had a functional government with the Prime Minister E.M.L. Ndele, from who is here, and with other members of cabinet. We also see Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana standing with them. They had a government, they have some strong institutions, vibrant institutions, and Southern Cameroon had the first democratic elections in Africa, where the opposition won the ruling party and there was peaceful transfer of power. We will also see that the issue of territorial integrity of Cameroon, which is often referred to, is something which exists in space, because in 2010, not just about a decade ago, the 64th president of General Assembly of United Nations was in Cameroon and presented two maps of different Cameroon to President Biya, which means when we talk of territorial integrity, this territorial integrity has to be unpacked, because Southern Cameroon has its independence in 1961,1st of October 1961, whereas La République du Cameroon already had its independence on the 1st of January 1960. So each country has its boundaries as obtained at independence, which means the territorial integrity of Cameroon doesn't include the territory of Southern Cameroon. We are talking about two different countries here. If at all these two countries came together, there must be a union treaty. There must be an agreement that modified the boundaries of Cameroon. If that agreement exists anywhere, we, the people of Southern Cameroon, would like to have this agreement. Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, Southern Cameroon as a people, lack of union treaty, like I already said. There is a UN Resolution 1608 of 21st April 1961 that was to determine the future of Southern Cameroon. And in that UN General Assembly, 64 member states voted in favor of Southern Cameroon to have its independence, whereas 23 voted against. Only 10 people did not participate in the voting exercise. This means if you want to go by the result of the voting, it shows clearly that Southern Cameroon was supposed to be an independent country based on this resolution. And resolutions 1514 on the Declaration on Granting of Independence to Colonial Countries is a fundamental right that the people of Southern Cameroon are entitled to. Again, Resolution 1541 of 15/12/1960, principles which should guide members in determining whether or not obligations exist to transmit the information called for under Article 73E of the Charter. That is, a country is supposed to emerge as a sovereign independent state, free association with an independent state, or integration with an independent state. But during the plebiscite of 11 February 1961, the people of Southern Cameroon were not given these three options. They were given just one option, which is the second option we see here, free association with an independent state. And it was broken into two. Either they should gain independence by joining Nigeria, or they gain independence by joining Cameroon. So we are arguing here that the United Nations failed to grant the people of Southern Cameroon the resolution 1514, which is their fundamental right to sovereignty. Also, we have, please, can you go back? In 2002, the people of Southern Cameroon, under the banner of Southern Cameroon National Council, filed a complaint at the Banjul, in Banjul, at the 37th session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, against the government of Cameroon. And this complaint was against the government of Cameroon for occupying our land, for annexing the people of Southern Cameroon, and for abusing their rights. And also, we have a ruling of the Federal High Court of Abuja that actually ruled in favor of Southern Cameroon, that Nigeria has to present the case of Southern Cameroon at the international platforms. They should take the case of Southern Cameroon to International Court of Justice. The case of Southern Cameroon should be taken to the United Nations Security Council to be debated, because we are clearly a people, and we have all proofs of marginalization, colonization, and annexation. Next slide, please. You skip? Good. So the people of Southern Cameroon came together with the people of French Cameroon in a kind of union to operate a federal government of system. And they were asked to draft a constitution to discuss on the form of government they were supposed to form and get back to the United Nations. But this never happened. When we joined the people of French Cameroon, we had a prime minister, we had functional and vibrant institutions. But what has happened? These institutions have been systematically erased in our history. None of these institutions exist in Cameroon today, what we call Cameroon, I will put it that way. And since 1961, the individual and collective rights of the people of Southern Cameroon have been grossly violated in many forms. Right up to date, as we speak, there is a genocide going on in Cameroon. And the question I am asking everybody that is here is if we are waiting for all Southern Cameroonians to be killed before an intervention is we come in, or we really see Southern Cameroonians as a people that have rights to exist and rights to determine their own future. Because we are a people under occupation and we did not commit any crime. It is the fault of the United Nations and it is the fault of the British and the French. That is why we are asking them to come back to Southern Cameroon and correct the mistakes they made. Because self-determination is explicitly defined by the United Nations, but unfortunately, the mechanisms of implementation are lacking. And we do not have that direct access to United Nations in order to present our case. So thank you so much for your kind attention and have a good one.
So thank you very much, George. So beautifully you have explained with your PowerPoint. And you really, the self-determination is a fundamental rights as well as the constitutional rights. And you are certain that South Cameroonian as a people, that's very beautiful, that's what we need. That's a right of self-determination. And how they eliminated the self-determination in the country by erasing the institutions and other rights and made a colonialization. So that's very important. So thanks for enlightening us with your PowerPoint and your demand that we need to have our right to self-determination. So thank you very much. Thanks for presenting your idea very beautifully. Thank you. Thank you very much. The next comes Miss Laila Muhammad, Hertz, a human rights activist, and to present your views so that we will be enlightened. Welcome, Ms. Laila Muhammad. Laila, are you present there? So you're not there, or please raise your hand.
Okay, you can skip the speaker.
Okay, then we'll pass on. Maybe she will be there. Then we'll pass on next one. So next I call upon is Ghada Al-Ryan. So he's a consultant and a researcher by Law for Palestine. And here comes to present her views. Most welcome is Ghada Al-Ryan.
You are not audible, Ghada. Ghada, you're not audible.
Unmute yourself and then speak.
Your audio is still not there. Now you are there. You're muted again.
Do you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Yes. Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you. And good evening, dear organizers, dear speakers and listeners. It's a pleasure to be today with you and to have the opportunity to talk about our struggles as Palestinians and about the injustice which our nation has been through since decades. As my colleagues already explained, the right to self-determination is relatively a modern term as it began to appear after the second half of the 18th century, and the main reason for its emergence was colonization and illegal control of the lands of other countries, which led at the end the people of these countries to demand the elimination and to call for freedom of self-determination and also for the independence. The Palestinian people are among the nations that are still under occupation in the modern era, and all their rights are still violated as a result of the Zionist movement's seizure of their lands, as a result of the displacement of their residents, and also as a result of the establishment of the State of Israel on its ruins. Therefore, it was imperative for the Palestinian people to obtain all their legitimate and inalienable rights guaranteed by international law, especially the right to self-determination. But let's go one step back and talk on how and when was the Palestinian right to self-determination recognized. The countries in the UN General Assembly Third Committee, the committee which deals with the humanitarian affairs and social matters, voted in favor of the resolution on the right of the Palestinian to self-determination, and 170 countries voted in favor of the resolution, but 7 countries voted against. The resolution itself reaffirms the right of the Palestinian to self-determination in their independent state of Palestine and urges all states, all special agencies and the United Nations bodies to continue supporting the Palestinians until they achieve the right to self-determination. Now, the General Assembly gave a legal interpretation for the Charter with regard to the right to self-determination. This is the basis for the right to independence and sovereignty, and other rights are branched from it. But the interpretation acquired the Charter of binding rules in international law. The history of the UN General Assembly is closely linked to their principle of the right to self-determination and its interpretation when it began to consider the question of Palestine in 1947. The report of the United Nations Special Committee on Palestine stated also the following, that the principle of self-determination, despite the fact that it was adhered to other Arab regions, but this principle was not applied to Palestine. And this is clearly due to the intention to facilitate the establishment of the State of Israel. Despite this opinion, the committee itself didn't give any importance to this principle and did not agree on its application for the Palestine or for the Palestinian. So it was divided into a majority that recommended the portion of Palestine and a minority that recommended the establishment of a united, independent Palestinian state with guarantees for the right of the minority residents. But the General Assembly, under pressure from the US and its allies, issued in its second session the resolution 181 in 1947 to divide Palestine. Thus, for 20 years, the General Assembly has viewed the issues of the Palestinian people and their rights as a refugee problem. And for the first time, the concept of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people appeared in the 24th session of the General Assembly in its resolution 2535 of 1969, in which it was stated that General Assembly reaffirms the rights of the people of Palestine or of the Palestinian people. We as Palestinians, we have the natural and undisputed right to own the lands on which we have lived since ancient times. And we have also the right to establish a Palestinian state and the right to self-determination. Therefore, we have the right also to enjoy all rights that are granted to us, which also are recognized by the international community with all its bodies and organizations. We should be able to enjoy a peaceful life in security on our territories and under our government. As a result, also, we are allowed to obtain this right by any means of obtaining or exercising it. Oppressed people have the right to free themselves from the shackles of control and to resort by all means in order to achieve their national liberation. The continuation of armed struggles in general constitutes a threat to the international peace and security. Therefore, finding a peaceful solution is at the core of the competence of the UN and regional organizations in order to end ethnic conflicts in line with Article 55 of the UN Charter. The report of the Commission of International Law Experts on the issue of violence that accompanies the demand for self-determination stated that it's often not the assertion of the right to self-determination by oppressed peoples that leads to violence, but rather the rejection of state authorities that leads to the outbreak of armed conflict. I will make it short and conclude with a question to Mr. Livingstone. Mr. Livingstone, how can the UN protect our and other nations' right to self-determination in the absence of the political will? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ghada Al-Ryan. Beautifully you have explained the situation in Palestine. So beautiful. And you have raised a question. That's another interesting thing that you have made. The struggle for self-determination and independence. That's very important. And the international law and the international community, and particularly UNO, how they can protect the rights of the Palestine. That's very, very, very beautifully articulated. So thanks a lot. Thank you. Thank you very much. We all work together to attain these particular things. Thank you. Thank you very much. So now I call upon, I'm very happy to invite Mr. Viswanathan Rudrakumaran, the Prime Minister of the Transnational Government of Tamil Eelam, New York. He has been actively working for this particular cause. Welcome, sir. Welcome. You are most welcome to share your views.
Thank you. Holding the sacred memory of our Mahabir who sacrificed their lives for the realization of the Eelam Tamils' inherent right to self-determination in the form of an independent and sovereign state, and for remedial justice and for remedial cessation, I would like to share my thoughts on the topic of self-determination of nations under occupation. But first, I would like to congratulate Honorable Livingstone Shevana for his commitment and contribution to the promotion of democratic and equitable international order. I also would like to take this opportunity to extend Eelam Tamil solidarity to the representatives of the Western Sahara, Kurds, Southern Yemen, Palestine, Catalonia, Occidental Armenia, and Southern Cameroon. I also would like to express how glad I am to hear Professor Paul Newman, who we consider as one of us. In view of the Eelam Tamils, the cause of the conflicts in the world, the cause for the death and destruction is this: the present international order is neither democratic nor equitable. The present international order is primarily designed by states, of states, for states. As our Tamil national leader repeatedly said, that states do not act on righteousness. States do not act on justice. States act primarily based on their national interest. The existing international institutions are state-centric. If you take the monetary institutions, IMF or World Bank, take the international judicial institutions, ICC, International Criminal Court or International Court of Justice, all are state-centric. Only states have access to these institutions. We, the oppressed people or the liberation movement, we do not have any access. I do not have to say this to Honorable Livingston Shenaga. He is well aware of this problem. In fact, his mandate is to rectify it. In his report to the General Assembly dated July 30th, 2019, he specifically stated that to have a more democratic and equitable international order is to ensure public participation and inclusion in traditional multilateral institutions. We, the Elam Tamils, are a prime example of the way in which the present international order victimized oppressed people. The UN Charter clearly states, Article 2 and Article 55 of the UN Charter says that the friendly relations between nations based on right to self-determination and equality. It should be noted, it didn't say friendly relations among states, it states friendly relations among nations. Article 1 of the Civil and Political Rights Covenant or Article 1 of the Economic and Social Rights Covenant loudly claims that all people have the right to self-determination. There's a General Assembly Resolution 2625, which is considered as a customary international law, proclaims by virtue of their right to self-determination, the people have a right to decide their own political status and to pursue their social, cultural, and economic development. We, the Elam Tamil people, like the people of Scotland, like the people of Croatia, like the people of Bangladesh, we have the objective elements such as distinct language and distinct culture. We also have the subjective elements identified by Judge Aman of the International Court of Justice in the Western Sahara case, that we have a concerted effort, conscious action, lasting will, real determination. We have all these subjective elements. We have the objective element. We satisfy the objective elements. We satisfy the subjective elements. We also have a traditional relationship with the territory, which has been recognized in international treaty. If you take a look at Indo-Sri Lankan Accord, which clearly state that the north and eastern part of Sri Lanka is a historical habitation of the Elam Tamils. So we satisfy the objective element. We satisfy the subjective element. We have a relationship to the territory. Still, we see a concerted effort in the UN as well as in the corridors of power to reduce us to a minority. They do not recognize as a people who are entitled to the right to self-determination. So where can we go? Big forum we can have access to establish that we constitute people and we are entitled to the right to self-determination. Unfortunately, there is no forum. There is no forum where we can go. That's the problem. Then we come to the situation in Sri Lanka. Okay, the Tamil situation in the island of Sri Lanka. The 1972 Constitution, the 1978 Constitution, in both constitution making, Tamils did not participate, did not even consent. So it is an alien domination. In fact, some scholars argue that the decolonization process is not completed with respect to the Tamils in the island of Sri Lanka. But the UN has not named us as a colonial territory. I do not want to venture in that direction at this time. We talk about the current situation. The constitutions were imposed on us. The laws, starting from 1956 Single Only Act, were imposed on us. We did not have any say in those legislative making because the Sri Lankan polity and the institutions are permitted with pervasive entrenched racism. We do not have any say there. In fact, this was recognized by the expert in the report of the expert panel appointed by then UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. In the report, the experts said the exclusion of Tamils, real or perceived, is the main cause for the conflict in the island of Sri Lanka. So under General Assembly Resolution 2625, when we are denied we are denied participation in the political process. 2625 guarantees territorial integrity of the states. Only the states that represent people irrespective of race, creed, color. But if since the Sri Lankan state does not represent us, we have every right to establish our right to self-determination in the form of an independent state. We want to resolve it peacefully. The Tamil national leader, Mr. Honorable Velupula Prabhakaran, repeatedly said, We want to resolve this conflict peacefully. But where we can resolve it? Which forum we can go? There's no forum. That is the problem now we face. So we have to come up with a forum. You take, for example, about what happened during the final stages of the war. According to the UN report itself, more than 70,000 Tamils, the civilians were killed. According to late Reverend Rayappu, 146,679 people are unaccounted for. Now these more than 12 years since 2009. Not a single person has been brought to justice, let alone be arrested. Why? Because all these international institutions, whether take it ICC, whether take it ICJ, are controlled by states. States act according to their own interest. They do not want to bring these actions in those forums. So what we have decided, Ulam Tamils, we take the matter in our own hands. We chart our own course. In this respect, we have launched a project called Victims-Driven International Justice. We have launched this project, and based on the evolving right to know and right to truth, we are in the process of obtaining evidence from the High Commissioner. Also last week, actually, we filed to request with the US State Department under the Freedom of Information Act. We have asked the US State Department to share the whatever information they have pertains to the 1983 racial program, and also especially the communication between the embassy and the State Department, and also the 2009, the final stage, especially the current President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's involvement in the white flag surrender. So we are presently, we are of the view the existing order does not going to serve our needs or will not bring justice to us. We'll create new mechanism. So that's what we have started. And also with respect to the 2009 Mullawaikal genocide, it was not perpetrated by one single army commander or one single politician or by one single army battalion. The whole state itself committed the crime. The whole state itself. So we had to bring the state to be accountable for the heinous crimes. And we know the difficulties. Again, the states have the so-called immunity, sovereign immunity, and it is codified in the Foreign Sovereign Immunity Act. You cannot bring any action against the states because, again, as I said, the whole thing is state-centric. But we have decided, with the support of the political support and the support of the civil society, we can change that law. We'll change the Foreign Sovereign Immunity Act, bring an amendment that the states can be sued for international crimes such as genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. So what happened in Mullawaikal genocide has enhanced and legitimized our call for an independent state under the concept of remedial justice and remedial secession. There may be questions, what is the threshold to invoke remedial justice, or what is the threshold to trigger remedial secession? But in the case of Elam Tamils, given the 157 racial programs starting from independence, from 1956 to 2008, which culminated in Mullawaikal genocide, which is now continuing in the form of structural genocide, easily pass that whatever the threshold may be. So presently we are invoking our right to self-determination. Also we supplement it under the remedial secession, remedial justice, remedial secession. Again, the problem is, where can we go? Which forum we can go? Can we go to the Human Rights Council? Can we go to the General Assembly? Can we go to the Security Council? Can we go to the ICJ? Can we go to the ICC? No, we cannot go anywhere. There's no forum for us. That is the problem. So we have to come up with some kind of a forum. We have to create some kind of a forum. I would like to say at the last year annual conference, international annual conference of the American Society of International Law, they established a fictional code. International Code for Self-Determination, and we had a panel on self-determination in the 21st century. So I take this opportunity to request Honorable Shenwanawa to make a recommendation to the Secretary General or to the General Assembly, Secretary General, to invoking his inherent power to establish a court, international court for self-determination, where we can argue, we can debate and resolve these issues in a peaceful manner. And there is precedent for this. There's a precedent for this. With respect to Ireland issue, during the League of Nations period, when Ireland wanted to join with Sweden, the League of Nations established a commission of jurists, established a commission of inquiry to analyze, to advise the League of Nations how to handle the Ireland people's wishes to be joined with Sweden. Of course, this tribunal will not have any binding effect. Of course, under the charter, we are not asking to establish a court that will have a binding force, because under the charter, we cannot do that. But this court, we believe, can give some guidelines, can give an advisory opinion to the international community, to the international institutions and policymakers to resolve these issues pertaining to self-determination in an appropriate form. Thank you. Tamil's destiny is in Tamil's hands. Tamil's thirst of Tamils is Thamilar.
Thank you very much, sir. Beautifully said the nature of the state, how the state acts unjustly. That's very beautifully you have done it. There is no forum for rectifying this particular thing. So that's really, repeatedly you have been emphasizing, reiterate the particular notion. That's very good thing that you have done it. And also you also demanded the international community, particularly UNO, to look into this particular matter in order to solve peacefully. That's what you are aiming at, and it's very beautifully rightly said and correctly articulated. So thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for your beautiful thing. Now, the last but not least, the keynote address speaker is Mr. Livingston Sevenyan, United Nations independent expert on the promotion of the democratic and the equitable international order. So he has been working in this field for so many years, and he knows how to articulate, how to go about. So therefore, he is a very right person to be here to listen to us and then represent these particular countries, all these countries, how they struggle for this right to self-determination. So therefore, welcome, sir. Welcome, Mr. Livingston Sevenyan.
Hello, good evening, Mr. Moderator.
Yes,
good evening.
Yes, you are most welcome. Please here.
Okay, thank you
My name
so
is
much, Mr. Moderator. Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr.
Kulandai Sami.
I think you're having some internet issue. We don't hear you very well.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Oh, hello. Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you hearing me?
You can proceed.
Hello. Are you hearing me?
Not audible.
Hello.
Not audible. Not audible. Not clear. Not clear.
I think it's an issue. Okay, it's an issue of connectivity
okay.
now.
You are okay.
But do you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, warm greetings from Kampala. Thank you so much for the invitation. As always, I'm very grateful to participate in these exchanges. I want to salute once again the Tamil Global Movement for the resilience, for being active, and of course for your efforts to drum up support for the Tamil case. This evening or afternoon or morning, wherever you are, I'm indeed delighted that you have widened the cause. That this time around, we are not only discussing the plight of the Tamils, we are also discussing the right self-determination of so many communities across the world who need to enjoy their right to independence, and of course, they enjoy a proper livelihood. I have listened very carefully to all the submissions, and I must say I'm indeed very impressed with the quality of the presentations, the commitment, the conviction, and the resoluteness to promote the right self-determination for your people. As the UN independent expert on promoting a democratic and equitable international order, I am required, as a matter of fact, to raise all those issues that have a bearing on inequality, on injustice, on human rights, for the world bodies to act. And as you recall, I have on several occasions spoken quite loudly on many of these injustices wherever they are. In fact, Mr. Viswanathan, I think I have pronounced it rightly, has rightly pointed out that in my recent report, I did make a case for public participation and inclusion of all people. And indeed, when the United Nations adopted the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and in particular, SDG 16, which talks about inclusion, they must have had in mind the necessity for everyone to participate, to be included, to be part and parcel of the development process. So when some communities are excluded, definitely we cannot realize the goal that was set in SDG 16 or the SDGs. So the whole question of the right self-determination has to come back to the center of the UN debates. As you might know, my predecessor, Professor Alfred Zayas, did, in his reports, did focus on the right self-determination. And I have had the benefit of reading his reports. I have had the benefit of discussing with him the issues that he raised with regard to the right self-determination. And increasingly, as I participate in all these exchanges like this evening, I am convinced that we need to revisit the question of the right self-determination. Of course, you are aware that I have been focusing on other issues. In particular, I want to draw your attention to the report that I'll be presenting on the 20th of September to the Council, and on 22nd October to the UN General Assembly. This time around, I have decided to focus for my fourth report on the whole question of multilateralism in addressing global concerns. Apparently, as I listen to you, I cannot imagine how you can deal with the question of self-determination without a collective action. One of the biggest challenges we now face across the world is this increasing phenomena or growing phenomena of unilateralism. There are a lot of countries that increasingly, because of their economic power, their political power, because of their interests, are increasingly blocking or undermining community efforts. So until we have a serious recourse to multilateralism, as it was envisaged under the UN Charter, it may be very difficult for us to drum up support for the right self-determination as it was envisaged. We all know that the right self-determination is recognized in international law. There is no further debate on that. And all of you have made a very compelling case that indeed your communities are either marginalized, excluded, they are increasingly isolated, and they are undergoing a lot of repression, and many of them are suffering. So they cannot enjoy the economic, social, political, and cultural rights. So for us to make a strong case for the right self-determination in respect of your communities, we need first to make a very strong and compelling case for multilateralism to be restored. Because as I listened to many of you, one thing came to my mind, that their countries, because of their economic might, are blocking all these efforts. And because many of these countries increasingly are acting unilaterally, they are not speaking with one voice, it becomes difficult for them to implement most of the resolutions that they are passing. The UN Human Rights Council, the General Assembly, I think you rightly put it, has passed several resolutions recognizing the identity and the right self-determination of many of these communities. For example, it is not in doubt that the right self-determination of the people of Palestine has been restated over and over. There is no doubt that the right self-determination of the South Cameroonians has been restated over and over. There is no doubt that the right self-determination of the Tamils has been stated over and over. And as I heard today, the Yemen, I think the Yemen, the people of South, I think South Yemen, and other people, West Armenia, and all of these increasingly have been making their case. But who is listening? I think as this Nathan has said, there is no forum. There are no people. There are no strong forces to listen to you. There are no strong forces. There are no platforms increasingly that are prioritizing the issue of self-determination. So at a tactical level, I will be presenting a report on multilateralism at the 48th session and the 76th, I think, session of the General Assembly. And I will be making a case that until countries speak with one voice on the injustices that are prevailing across the world, it will be very difficult to realize the SDGs. Not only that, as the UN celebrates its 75th anniversary, it needs to go back to the drawing board to figure out exactly what are those issues that increasingly are making it difficult to realize its goals. Because as you rightly put it, they are not doing much about the plight of so many people across the world. Actually, as I listen to more and more submissions on different issues, it has become increasingly clear to me that the UN is failing in many respects. So that means we need to drum up support for reform. The UN has to be reformed. The UN Security Council has to be reformed. The ECOSOC has to be reformed. We need to adopt new methods of work. We need to identify new priorities. We need to go back to the drawing board. So my argument and my case for multilateralism is really going to be centered around that. I will be also making a case not only for collective voice, but I also be putting across certain proposals. There are several organizations and individuals who have approached me on the need for a new forum within the United Nations that can echo individual voices. For example, a parliamentary assembly, a citizens' parliamentary assembly. So I will be drumming up support for some of these ideas. And along the way, I will then, I think in my next report, the 5th report, I will then be able to now bring up the issue of self-determination. But having said that, let me also say that increasingly, I don't see political will. There seems not to be a lot of political will among nations to address issues of human rights. I think human rights is taking a back burner increasingly. There seems to be more emphasis on certain political interests. Recently, I moderated a webinar for, I think there were 15 UN member states, which were arguing that unilateral coercive measures are making lives very difficult for those affected and targeted communities. And while these nations were making this case, there were a block of nations who were saying that there is no way they can do without unilateral coercive measures. And yet, when you consider some of these countries which have suffered unilateral coercive measures, countries like Venezuela, countries like Cuba, countries like many of these countries, you'll find that the local people, the local population, are suffering at the expense of course, the political elite. So we need to strike a balance. We need to strike a balance. How do we ensure that human rights are respected while at the same time realizing the plight of the most marginalized? So as you have put it rightly, my mandate finds itself in a very critical phase, these challenges, but at the same time, I need also to enlist political will, and that is not very easy to achieve. But having also said that, let me also restate this. If we take a more practical approach, one way of ensuring that your cries, your concerns, your efforts are recognized is to constantly bring up these issues. Like today, I have learned about Armenia. I've learned about Yemen. I've learned about some more about South Cameroon. Now, all along, I have always thought more and focused more on the Tamils and Palestine. Of course, you know that on the question of Palestine, there is a specific UN mandate. There is a mandate holder on Palestine, but there is no mandate holder on some of and most of your areas. So the question is this a selective approach? Should we continue to have a selective approach? For example, if the Tamils for 30 years have been agitating for statehood, if the Yemenis are agitating for statehood, South Cameroon is talking about so many years. Yemen, many of your submissions are targeting so many, are talking about the struggles for many years. How comes that there is no mandate? There is no mandate that is addressed to your concern. So we need also to deal with this question of selective approach. That selectivity of the UN also will need to be addressed. So at a practical level, I want to urge you to continue holding and hosting these fora and bring in as many communities, as many people as possible so that your voice can be heard, such that when I devote my report, my next report to self-determination, definitely there will be a basis because, you know, increasingly, every time we speak out, we are told that this is not the first time the issue is being raised. So you must have popular support to back you up in order to revisit a matter that has been a subject of discussion before. Another issue I would like to raise as part of our strategy beyond awareness is also to take advantage. I think I said this before. There is need for you to take advantage of those sessions when we present these reports. Even though I am not focusing on the right self-determination, it would be good during question time for you, Armenia, Tamil, all of you, to bring up these issues and in question time and say, ask the independent expert, what are you doing about the right self-determination of the Tamils, of the South Cameroonians, so that somehow in my response, I am able to bring up the issue. As I told you in our very last webinar, at a tactical level, once I have raised an issue during my reporting session, I am then able to hold meetings with the permanent delegation of the country in question. For example, if an issue has been raised in question time and I've responded to it, then it gives me a basis to say I would like to meet with the government delegation or with the permanent delegation of the country in question. So I am looking at a very practical steps, practical approaches to drumming up the issue. Because the issue of self-determination is well known, is well documented, is well understood. It's no longer a new issue. But the question is, at a practical level, how do you engage the states? So if you come in and during question time and you ask me, what are you doing as an independent expert to address the question of inequality for the Tamils, for the South Cameroonians, for the Armenians, for the Yemens? Then after responding, I have an opportunity then to seek audience with the permanent delegation of that country, and then we can have discussions along that line. And in my previous sessions, as I said before, I have had opportunity to meet with various delegations, like the government of Qatar. I've met the delegation of Venezuela, I've met Iran. Every time I get an opportunity, I am able to meet with those delegations, and then we can have long, bigger discussions. For example, the issue of human rights in the Philippines. When I presented my recent report, I had a chance to meet with the delegation of the Philippines to discuss the issue of human rights in the Philippines. So I urge you at a very practical level to take advantage of this session when I'm presenting my report to bring up these questions so that we can continue the discussion among member states, because we need to bring out this discussion from wherever it is to the member states so that we can continue to build the support and momentum around the issue. Mr. Moderator, at a practical level, I also think we need to revisit the resolutions that have been passed by the Council and the General Assembly. Again, if I devote my next report to the right self-determination, then I want to know, I want to revisit the resolutions. What exactly was the content of these resolutions, and what are the reasons why they have not taken practical steps to implement them? Now, part of the challenge is about information. I would like to invite you all of you who are making presentations and others on the right self-determination, to share your information with me. I need to be more educated about the case of Yemen. I want to be more educated about the case of South Cameroon. At least I know a lot more about PLO, Palestinian Liberation. I know more about Tamil now, But for the rest, I don't have much information. I need to be educated. You say, as an independent expert, you have to be very authoritative. You must be up to date. So if you share with me latest information and data, it also helps me to make a compelling case. So at a practical level. So in terms of pushing the momentum, pushing the case, pushing your struggles forward, I would like to ensure that the debate, the whole question of self-determination comes back and is centered, comes back to the drawing board, and that UN member states now devote more attention to this issue. As you know, this is a political issue. The right self-determination apparently is also a very political issue. And sometimes you must strike compromises. There will be need for compromises. We need to build alliances. We need now to start to build bridges so that we have member states who can constantly raise the issues so that more and more momentum is built. Because in the last 3 years as a mandate holder, I am not aware of any time, any session when the issue of self-determination was raised by any member state. I have not had that discussion in the last 3 sessions when I presented my report. So I wonder if this is a matter that is actually topical. How comes there has not been any discussion or no state whatsoever has come up with the issue of the right self-determination? Of course, one of the other things you need to know that my mandate is the most divisive mandate among all the mandates because it has geopolitical connotations. As you all know, the West has always been in opposition to this mandate. And many times when you raise those issues that you are raising concerning right self-determination, they have a bearing on the West. So they are not very quick to pick up those issues. And yet they have such a very strong voice. So we need to build alliances. We have the non-aligned movement. It has 120 countries. If only we could get some of, even if we got half of that number, I think we would be able to draw the attention of member states. So, Mr. Moderator, distinguished speakers, I chose to respond to many of the issues we raised from a practical point of view. At a theoretical level, I fully agree and appreciate the efforts you are making. I appreciate the consensus that has been built around the issue of self-determination. But what we need to know and appreciate is that we are dealing with a political issue. And many of these UN member states increasingly have certain strategic interests with some countries that you are contesting. And many times they want to play it safe. So to strike a balance, we need to build alliances, we need to create awareness, we need to take advantage of sessions when the issue can be brought up. But as I have said over and over, I am with you. I have a very strong conviction that this matter must be pursued to a logical conclusion. And I am glad that I have had the opportunity to have my mandate renewed. So at least I still have some time to address these issues. Now, last year I addressed the issue of international financing. Of course, it is not an easy issue. Now I'm going to address the issue of multilateralism. So I think the next agenda should be the right self-determination. But I must thank you. I must commend you. I must tell you that we are together. We are aware of all these shortcomings, but one barrier stands in our way, that the institution that we are targeting, the United Nations, at 75 years of its anniversary, remains a very politically divisive institution, remains an institution which is largely undemocratic. It is not inclusive. It is state-centered. And generally, you have to work so hard to make a breakthrough. However, I must say that over the last 3 years, I have been able to raise those pertinent issues, and many states always feel obliged to attend my session because they know I'm raising the hot issues. And be rest assured that when I make my next report, I am going to find out a way of ensuring that at least I raise the issue of self-determination pending a formal investigation of the matter. And of course, I hope that one day we shall come back and say, here we are victorious, we made it. Thank you so much. Thank you for the resilience, the opportunity. Keep it up. You have an ally right now, and definitely I will not abandon you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. And we are very happy that you are a supporter and promoter of the right to self-determination. So beautiful, the assurance that you have given us. We are all really enlivened, so that by your assurance. And you are rightly said that it's a collective effort, collective action. Because if people are unanimous in their desire for self-determination, it strengthens their claim. So that's, you are rightly said that it's a collective effort that we need to work together. Then secondly, you are also raised an issue that is a selectivity of the UNO that has to be questioned. We need to reform that. So only collective effort that we could reform that. And during the question hour, we need to what we call raise our questions so that we have a clarity and ideas. And why the resolution is not implemented. So raise a question that why the resolution is not implemented. And share. So you demanded, you expected that you give me the updated information. So that's more important, so that you are also get to know and you are enlightened, and so that the things will be represented with a clarity. So therefore, thank you very much. You are also partner with us and encouraging us, and you are supporting us. So thanks a lot. Now we'll pass on the question hour. Now people will be raising their questions to you. We really after listening to 2-3 hours, you are able to spend some more minutes to clarify the questions raised by these people. Some speakers raise their questions. Now the participants also will raise the questions. Please be patient to respond to these particular questions. Now the question hour, please make short. Your question will be very short and sharp, so that the Mr. Livingston is able to articulate and answer very well. So please raise your hands, and then you ask your questions. Then we are able to follow in order. So now the first person could raise your hand, and then you ask your question. The question should be very sharp and short.
I think Ms. Lida Magushian raised her hand first, and then Princess Dora, and then Manivannan.
Okay. Please raise your question.
Thank you. I would like to address really my thanks to Dr. Livingston, who has very beautifully expressed the share of our sufferance and the rights that we have of our existence, because it's really the right of existence of population. So my question will be this one: how come that the population which has suffered a genocide and whose state territory is under occupation under international law, and though it was recognized in international law, and we have all the proof of that, is not the object of more attention and consideration by the international community, because it has been like 100 years that this situation is still going on like this, and so much suffering is of the indigenous people in occupied Western Armenia by the armed forces of Turkey. Thank you very much, Dr. Livingston, for your attention, really.
The next will be, I guess, Princess Dora, Father Klandasamy.
Yeah, Dora, Mr. Dora, welcome. You can raise your question.
Thank you so much, Dr. Livingston. Thank you for this presentation. Yeah, Dr. Livingston, I wish to just make a question. I don't know if you would take this seriously to the UN. My question is this: the United Nations always looks at us looking for self-determination as the thing that we are going to be a failed state. And most often they're quoting South Sudan. But I don't believe that we can be failed states because we are people here. We are people in a territory, and most of us have a lot of capacity. We are versatile in so many fields, trained in so many fields. So that is something that they always look at us like we'll be a failed state, but they forget to look at South Sudan, that the war extended for more than 20 years. And another question with respect, the part B of my question, is that most small countries, like I live in Europe here, most small countries are more stable, actually more stable than even larger countries. For instance, there's always a kind of like a genocide going on between the Chinese government and a tribe. I've forgotten the name of the tribe. It's a very big country. But look at small countries like Luxembourg. It's a very stable country just next to Belgium. The island of Malta, stable. The Principality of Liechtenstein is a stable state. So we believe that if there are a lot of conflicts, the more we can resolve these conflicts by looking at it from a historical point of view and having a nation like the Tamil nation separate from Sri Lanka, that is going to be better because there will be some stability. Because after all, the Tamil, the area of the Tamil state is even larger than most of these small states that we see. So is the United Nations thinking about such things, looking at the stability of most small states, or that they keep complaining to us about microstates? Meanwhile, the microstates are more stable. That is what I say. I don't know. Thank you.
Livingston, you want to answer the questions now, or you take some more questions? Would you like to take some more questions?
Yes, please.
Yeah,
More questions.
Yes. Next, Mr. Manivannan, unmute yourself and then you ask questions.
Good evening, Livingston. My particular question is about self-determination. Is how come even in the case of genocide, like whatever happens in Sri Lanka, and a country is trying to destroy the population of Tamils by making them either run out of the country or making them subdued, to the case that and also occupying as well as what is called changing the demography. All these things are happening, and in that case there was no R2P applied, or even during the war there was no RTP applied. So how can this nation survive? We cannot continue to fight for self-determination for the hundreds of years, so where we are getting marginalized and becoming a nobody at the island. So the problem is that how we are going to be protected in some form or another until we achieve our self-determination, as the system, the UN system is rolling very slowly, and how we can achieve the protection, and how can you address this protection for Tamil against the genocide, as well as how we can retain as a nation which is being occupied and overrun by the majority population, and also demography is also changing, and all these we are under threat as a nation. So how are you going to address this? Thank you.
Okay, next, Sojo Ambaso. Please unmute yourself and then ask question.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Doctor, for the presentation. I really learned a lot from your presentation. My question will be based on the Southern Cameroons, and which we decided to call Ambazonia. You made some very important point by talking about being ready to compromise. To begin with, before I continue, I would like to emphasize that it's sort of self-determination that is the people of Ambazonia, that is Southern Cameroonians, are looking for, is external self-determination that is independent from the Republic of Cameroon. And why we are seeking for this is because of the lack of trust that we have. So my question is, how do you build or compromise with someone that have betrayed you over and over and over again? We voted in 1961 to join La République du Cameroon in a federation to obtain our independence by joining them. But La République du Cameroon voted against our independence just 4 months after. When Nigeria that we voted against actually voted for our independence. So they breached the trust from the onset. And again, their president acknowledged in 2019 that all their intention have always been to assimilate us. How do you actually trust such a people to compromise with them or form any form of union with the people whose intention have always been to assimilate you? Then, secondly, I would like to comment on what our sister said. They keep on talking about South Sudan. South Sudan fought for 30 years, and it's normal that after you fight, you take time before you become stable. Right now, South Sudan is very stable. People, South Sudanese are leaving America back into their country to build their country. And so it's not going to be anything different from Ambazonia or the Southern Cameroons. Then I also want to know that the UN recognizes the independence of Palestine. What is the main problem now that the fighting is continuing, even though the Palestinian state has been recognized as an independent state? Thank you very much, sir.
Another two more questions that you can, then afterwards you can answer, Mr. Livingston. Then Elan, next Elan, please unmute yourself and then ask questions. Elan.
Good evening, gentlemen, and very impressive presentation by Mr. Livingston. And we all express what we are all share same kind of pain, and all the presentation of my brothers and sisters, we felt the pain. But my question to Mr. Livingston is that there is a agenda for a very last 20, 30 years. There is a problem that is the G20 can resolve those kind of problem by lunch, dinner, and the breakfast. This is how the problems are. They really looking at. Elam Tamil's not Elam Tamil's problem. There's problems all around the world. There's a problem all around the world that we face. All the problem is similar. Self-determination is the basic fundamental human rights. So that's who is supposed to protect that? Who are the developed people, are developed nations? Are they really doing it? Are they really developed people? Are they really protecting the innocent people? This is the question that we all must ask. And this is such a situation that we need to understand where we are, and we need to come and we need to make our voices very louder and very stronger, because we are so weak, because we are so part, because of different countries. But when we are come together, we can create a very loud message. We can to the whole the ruling states. So thank you very much for your presentation, and hope we.
Yeah, the last question. Maybe next we'll see the next slot. For this slot, the last question.
Work together in the future to figure out.
Dr. Paul Newman, Professor Paul Newman.
Father, am I audible?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, my question is in two parts. The first one is, how does Dr. Livingston look at the issue of the right to self-determination of the Tamils? And then what are the measures he would like to take to help the people of the Tamil Elam to gain the right to self-determination, which has been stifled by the government of Sri Lanka and the international community? Secondly, the second part of the question is, what is the support he expects from the civil society as well as activists and the NGOs in pushing forward this issue of self-determination of nations that have been struggling to gain self-determination? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Livingston, you can answer now all these questions, and maybe the next question we'll take up second part. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those questions. I really appreciate them. They largely point to the necessity for us to drum up support for the issue. By the way, I forgot to mention that I enjoyed also the presentations from Western Sahara and Catalonia. And definitely I will be keen to know more about Western Sahara and the Catalonian issue. So thank you so much, those who presented on Western Sahara and Catalonia. Definitely all your questions border on how can we draw the attention of the world community to the need for self-determination of all those communities that you represent. How can we ensure that we achieve this objective of gaining independence? It is all about gaining political independence and statehood. And of course, in all the cases we have here, we are talking about, in most cases, majority who are oppressing the minority. Sometimes it is an issue of the indigenous people being oppressed. What I want to state and very clearly say is that one thing is clear. When you talk about the right self-determination within the framework of the United Nations, it is no longer one of those priority concerns. That's one we need to address. That one you need to understand. We need to appreciate that at the United Nations level, there is hardly any serious discussion going on the right self-determination. That's why I said earlier that in all the three sessions where when I had the opportunity to present reports, I hardly had any submission from states on the whole question of self-determination. That means this issue needs to be revived. And I stated very clearly that my predecessor had addressed himself to this issue. But I think it's high time now that the matter is brought back to the center. And what we are doing now is to revive this debate, this discussion. You see, the UN General Assembly and the UN Human Rights Council pass so many resolutions. At every session, they are passing resolution, one after another. Apparently, I am always wondering whether there is a political will to implement those resolutions. Because you know very well, we are about 8 mandate holders, and all of us present reports and resolutions are passed, not only on the reports that we present, but also on other issues. The question is, how do you ensure that the issue of self-determination is prioritized? And I think that is our problem. Secondly, I want also to draw your attention to the fact that the United Nations, as an institution, the way I understand it now, is a political institution with a lot of political. You have alliances. You have a large following on an issue. The danger is that many of these issues are relegated to the periphery. They could easily be raised, but that's the end of the story. If it's not an issue of oil, or it's not an issue of COVID-19, or it's not an issue, whatever it is, Some of those are just issues debated, discussed, resolution passed, and that's the end. So we need to generate momentum. And that, for me, I think, responding to Paul Newman, we need to generate momentum for the right self-determination. I think the UN knows exactly the problem in all the areas we have talked about. Whether you talk about the Tamils, whether you talk about Western Sahara or Catalonia, these are issues that are well known. They know very well that people in those areas are being oppressed. They know. But there are political considerations as well. There are political compromises they are making. There are priorities that they have set which are very different. And this growing phenomena of unilateralism is making it very difficult for them to speak as one voice and implement those resolutions. So in terms of strategy, I would like, one, to create more awareness about these communities. I want to ensure that the issue of self-determination is brought back to the center. I would like to see more states raising these concerns. I would like to interface with many permanent missions, particularly for those countries which are affected, so that I continue this dialogue. That is one way through which I can constantly drum up support for many of your issues that you have raised. There are political interests at work here. It is no longer an issue of how many years you have struggled. Yes, it could be 100 years for the South Cameroonians. It could be 30 years for the Tamils. It could be very many years. Who doesn't know about the problem of Palestine? Everyone knows about Palestine. But how comes that despite all the resolutions that have been passed, we still have serious incursions into Palestinian territory? I think the answer lies in drumming up support, building alliances, ensuring that the institutions that are supposed to address this matter are reformed. By the way, I need to speak more about the need to reform these institutions. They are too statist. They are so state-centered. They hardly listen to the voices of the people, the communities we are talking about. They are too state-centered. And as long as they are too state-centered, the plight of the people, the majority of our people who are being oppressed, who are being killed, that definitely does not seem to be their priority. So we need to address that question of state-centeredness and statism. It's a problem that we need to address decisively. And that's why I'm devoting my next report to multilateralism. Because until we destroy the issue of unilateralism, because unilateralism is all about self-interest. So you'll find that the big superpowers are constantly dominating the debate and their interests are taking center stage. And as such, all of these discussions about Catalonia, Western Sahara, Tamil, Yemen, Armenia, they definitely don't feature so much. So we would like to do that. But again, as we have observed earlier, if we speak together, we ensure a louder and louder voice, as one of the participants has noted, there is a strong likelihood that the issue will be brought back on the table. But again, I need to constantly remind you that this particular mandate that I'm holding right from the beginning is geopolitically sensitive. And I have seen many states being very uneasy whenever my report comes up. And I recall the last one was even more sensitive, because I was talking about reforming international financial institutions, including the World Bank, IMF, and others. So there is a big challenge here that we face. But of course, let's not forget that every effort counts. Your efforts definitely count. They all count. The more we empower people, the more we sensitize our people back home, the higher the chances that the matter will gain more international attention and action will follow. So, in brief, I would say that's how I view this issue. Definitely, I'm quite now increasingly knowledgeable about this issue. I share your concerns. I share your plight. And definitely, I know that I have a group of people behind me when I raise this issue who will definitely give me the support that I need. But I must tell you that I've seen at every UN session, different communities demonstrating before the United Nations, and sometimes I wonder whether they listen to them, because they can only demonstrate outside the UN premises, and as such, you wonder whether their voices are being heard. But of course, when you are inside the building, or inside the premises, or part of the session, or you have a platform like we do, then definitely you are at odds to ensure that their voices are heard. And that's what I'm trying to do as much as possible, to ensure that those voices outside are heard inside.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot. Beautifully you said that you be the voice of the voiceless. Now, in the second slot, you have 4 questions. The first question will be Mr. Bosco.
Yeah, good morning and good evening, everyone. I want to ask to Doctor if any chance to have a meeting with the fourth committee of the General Assembly. With a member of the fourth committee, if any chance for you to organize this kind of half-day meeting with them, and where the civil society can make their pledge. And for example, currently the chair of the fourth committee is Madam Keisa Ania Magir. She's from Grenada. And I know her because she was also a very strong activist before. So my question is, it's any chance for you to write to the member of the fourth committee, and specifically the bureau of the fourth committee, which is with Grenada and Sierra Leone, and also there is Indonesia and Cuba. So on the way that we can have a webinar with them and talk about the issue before, because they have their for the next General Assembly, it will be very late, but perhaps we can prepare for the February meeting, and we can have a closed meeting with them on Zoom or other application, and I want to know if you can arrange that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next question will be Jesse Yangu.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for the presentation, and thank you, Doctor, and all the panelists for this very educative and informative panel that we on. I have learned a lot. Dr. Livingston, thank you for your very interesting and answers. At least we are glad that you're looking forward to taking these issues seriously than they have in the recent past. I think all of us understand that self-determination is a long process. It's not something that just automatically happens. And in most of these regions, in most of these areas, there are active wars that are going on. So maybe I didn't introduce myself, but I am from Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia. So I'm an activist. My question is, why are we looking to bring self-determination to the forefront, and knowing that there is very limited political will to address these things? What can we do in the meantime in those areas where there is active war, like in Southern Cameroon? So we have a genocide going on. Is it possible then to push for maybe UN humanitarian interventions, push for fact-finding independent missions to be sanctioned by the UN? Are those things that your office can push for in the meantime while we continue to bring awareness and put pressure on the plight for self-determination? And that would be my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessie. The next question from Ambazonia House. Please unmute yourself. Ambazonia House.
Yes, greetings everyone. Greetings to the organizers. And thank you, Dora, for inviting me into this meeting. I appreciate Dr. Livingston about his very insightful and knowledgeable responses and kind of promises he's made to be able to bring these issues sort of to the higher quarters. I just want to make a very short, very brief remark. When I heard Dr. Livingston respond, and he kept calling our people the people of South Cameroon. It's some people choose to call it Southern Cameroons, as the British called it, but it's really not South Cameroon, it's Southern Cameroons. South Cameroon would be a different territory. It's a misrepresentation of the people of the Southern Cameroons. Different experts have spoken on it, and I believe the majority of our people had agreed that our name was Ambazonia, to create that distinction and that clarity. But for whatever reason, some of our people still prefer to use the name Southern Cameroons, maybe for historical reasons. But I just wanted to point out that because I don't feel very comfortable when I hear, my own people being referred to as South Cameroon, which is a quite different set of people. And those people do not have an issue. They're not looking for self-determination. So, but I understand, like he said, he's new to the issue or the case of the people of former British Southern Cameroons, today called Ambazonia. So we're looking for a channel, Dr. Livingston, if you give us a contact, or we'll go through our Tamil friends to get your information, and then we can feed you a lot of literature, a lot of material about our case. And then I also want to give a shout out to our Sahawiri friends, to all the people that are fighting for self-determination all over the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you. The last question from Lavan. Please unmute yourself.
Lavan,
yeah.
Oh, you can hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. It's not a question. I really wanted to thank you, Dr. Livingston, and for all the speakers. My special thanks for Mr. Rudra Kumaran Viswanathan, the Prime Minister of TGTE. When I asked him to come to this forum and address our Tamil issue, he wholeheartedly accepted our invitation. I really appreciate that one. Thank you.
Okay. So now, Mr. Dr. Livingston, you can answer.
Once again, thank you so much for all those questions. I highly appreciate them. First of all, to my friend from the Ambazonia House for Elected Representatives, thank you so much for that clarification. definitely it goes back to what I was saying, that I need to be more educated about some of these areas. So from now on, I will be making reference to Ambazonia or Southern Cameroon. Thank you so much for the clarification. To Jesse, yes, definitely we need to find interim measures to address the problem. Fact-finding mission could be a possibility, but of course you also know that before you undertake a fact-finding mission, the nation in question has to accept. Quite often we send out requests to member states and they decline because they don't want to be investigated. So we can share notes. I would request Jesse to keep in touch with me, and then I will find the most relevant mandate that we can take advantage of, so that some of these possible measures can be adopted. So the other option is, of course, to issue a communication on the situation and urge the member state to take corrective action. But again, as I have indicated over and over, we need to work together. So let's keep in touch over this and explore. We just have to explore. No one has the answers. By the way, I think I need to make this very clear. My role as an independent expert is to shout, is to raise your voices. I am not a decision maker as such. Yes, I have a forum. I have legal presence before the world bodies, and I can make a case, and definitely it can be picked up. But sometimes some of the recommendations we make, sometimes some of the issues we raise are not taken up. In fact, Jesse, as you spoke, what came to my mind is the necessity for me to reach out to the UN Security Council. You know, all these world bodies are under my mandate. My mandate requires me to examine them, their practices, and make proposals. So I am mandated to examine all of these global institutions. So I'll be looking out for an opportunity as well to reach out to the UN Security Council, because when you raise issues of conflict, these are concerns for the UN Security Council. So I definitely will have to find an opportunity to reach out to them. It's not easy, so I'm not making empty promises. Sometimes when I'm in New York, I am at odds to get audience from some of the agencies because they don't want to be questioned. They don't want to feature in my subsequent reports. But some of them have been so kind that they have opened their doors because they know they have an obligation to let us in. So I will be happy to pick up this issue. Bosco, certainly I am happy to take advantage of this proposal. Again, we can find a way of reaching out. Since you have the contact, Bosco, I would urge you to share that, and I'm happy to write to the chair of the fourth committee, because I have audience before the third committee, not the fourth committee. It's the third committee that we normally address. So for the fourth committee, I will need to reach out. Please share the contacts and then we can work together. And I'm sure Wimal would be very happy to organize the next webinar on that matter. So Wimal, yes. Just put you on high alert.
Yes.
Bosco has raised a possibility of reaching out to the fourth committee, and we can work together to achieve that, to have a webinar around that. So Bosco, please, let me have the opportunity to reach out to them. Is there any question that I've not answered?
Last question, Dr. Livingston. There's a last question. If you permit me, I can ask the last question. CA. Somebody has raised CA.
Come again. What's the issue?
Yeah, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being so generous as to allow me to ask my question, even though it's the last question coming. I think I want to thank the presenter, and I agree with him, and I share his views that the UN has increasingly been moving away from the UN Charter concept of we the people, and moving towards state instead, which is not what the UN was conceived to deal with. Secondly, I also agree that the big powers have what they've been trying to do to appropriate the United Nations to achieve their own interest, bullying others who have contrary views and try to suppress views that are inconsistent with their own. This is a very, very bad development. My fear is that we don't have right now a Secretary General who can take this thing by the horns, as it were, and come out with them. And I expect perhaps people like you should also be raise the alarm, the red flag, and say this is not correct. We are departing from the Charter provision. This is not how the UN was conceived. We're considered as we the people. You should listen to the people, not consistent about states. So my question, therefore, is, you have given, you listened to all the questions that have been asked, and I think you had a feeling, you have a sense, and I also had a sense that everyone was looking for practical leads on this very important issue of self-determination. Your answers, of course, give some hope, some possibility, but it's only a distant possibility, maybe the next 5, 10, 20 years, as it were. I do recall you say, well, waiting, we can wait. The other thing is that time needs time. But I want you to be really very, very honest and tell us, do you actually think all these cases that you listen to, Ambazonia, Tamil, Western Sahara, and so on and so forth, have a smarting chance along this self-determination route in the next 2 or 3 years?
Can I respond, or you have more questions?
Okay.
No, that's all the question, yes. Yes,
Yeah,
are there
you can
any
respond.
chance of success in the next 2 or 3 years? That's all my question. Yeah.
Okay. Can I respond?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Yes, Dr. Livingston.
CA, you have asked me a very difficult question. Whether they have any chance in the next 2, 3 years. With a high degree of honesty, I can say that in the next 2, 3 years, they can be heard. They have an opportunity of becoming louder. They have an opportunity of being recognized. They have an opportunity of putting across their case more, but I don't think they are going to achieve self-determination in 3, 4 years. Because, as you rightly put it, these struggles have been going on for many, many years, 30 years, some 100 years. A lot of blood has been shed. There are a lot of political interests at hand. I think what we are discussing here is the possibility of elevating the struggles in the next 2, 3 years so that they gain more prominence and apparently enlist more action. I think that's what we can achieve. Some of the solutions can be achieved at a national level. Some of the solutions can be achieved at a regional level because there are also regional blocks. There are regional groupings. across the world, that also must be sensitized. That must also take up some of these issues. Yes, the UN is the ultimate, but as CA has rightly put it, and I entirely agree with him, the UN is a highly politicized institution, statist in nature, and largely driven by the superpowers. And increasingly, there is a lot of discontent and discomfort around the institution itself. When you think about the original aims of the UN and what it is doing now, you definitely agree with me that there has been a very big
Livingston, Dr. Livingston, you unmute yourself. You're not able to hear you.
I was muted.
Yeah.
I just want to say that if we work together, if we continue to raise our voices, and if we continue to explore the spaces, there should be an opportunity for us to be heard more. And I want to invite you to listening to my next report. It's going to address very many issues that CA has raised. The whole question of we the people comes up. The whole question of the charter comes up. The whole question of multilateralism vis-a-vis unilateralism comes up. The whole question of the COVAX initiative comes up. So to some extent, I am already raising some of those important elements that are key to attaining our goal. And as I said, once we achieve on some, then definitely we create a pathway for the right self-determination to gain prominence. So my brothers and sisters, let's keep the subject alive. Let's continue to work together. CA, I am not as optimistic as you might expect, because what we are doing now is simply to revive this agenda. I have said it over and over in my intervention that for the last 3 or 4 years I have been in the UN, I have not had this debate. And until Wimal and company brought up these issues, definitely that's when I have now, tried to sensitize many of my colleagues over them. So we are reviving an agenda which seems to have been sidelined. And as we revive it, we need to work harder to ensure that it gains center stage. And let's take advantage of all those opportunities that we have identified. Like Bosco has said, the 4th committee, the whole question of fact-finding in southern Cameroon or Amazonia. All of these issues are opportunities in some way. And once we take advantage of them, I believe very strongly that by next year, the question of self-determination for all these communities will have come high on the agenda.
Thank you very much, Doctor. There is one question, last question. Can I ask the? Okay.
Oh yes.
Sokalingam Yogalingam. Last question. Sokalingam Yogalingam, please.
Yeah.
And we are.
Good evening. Sorry, he was being told many times it's the last question, and we keep repeating him, but he's still willing to take it, which is I really appreciate. And my name is Sokalingam Yogalingam. I'm a member of Parliament for Transnational Government of Thamilar, and I'm talking from UK. Good evening, Dr. Livingston and other panels and other members who's listening. Basically, we are talking about self-determination, how we can actually work towards that. Personally, I would say one thing for the Tamils, and I would let Dr. Livingston to take a point on. and I would ask him how we're going to act on it. That last bit. Basically, there were 3 resolutions were passed against the United Nations Human Rights Council, and that was from 2015, 17, and 19. And when it's come to 21, there were 1 more resolution was passed and given an extra 1 year extension towards Sri Lanka. But we don't want any nation. Many nations will support, obviously, Russia and China will support, but how, in your expert, how are you going to put forward a case towards the Tamils to support? Because the Sri Lankan government had enough chances to defend itself and explain themselves why they can't give a rights to the Tamils. And we are asking for a referendum in Sri Lanka for self-determination, which is by rights of the people. And how the question would be, how as an expert will formulate a formula to put forward. I'm sure you would need to go through that 4 resolutions and try and come up with something to put forward on behalf of us. And I'm sure Bosco and others will support, and Translation Government will, and there are many other organizations. How are you going to support our case of self-determination in that scenario? Thank you.
Yes, now Dr. Livingston, you can answer.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Yogi, for that intervention. Now, let me reiterate what I intend to do at the next session. And this is not new, because this is something I have said over and over at our recent webinars. I have requested that the Tamil movement, as members of civil society, you intervene when I present my report. My report is coming up on 20th of September for the Human Rights Council and 22nd of October for the UN General Assembly. During the question session, and perhaps before that, you need to register yourselves for this opportunity so that you can raise the question of self-determination during that session. When you do raise the issue, because that's not going to be the subject of my report, the subject of my report is multilateralism, although it is raising very pertinent issues that have a bearing on the question we are dealing with here. I'm not discussing self-determination at the next session, the 40th session. So during question time, I invite you to raise the issue of self-determination as a question to the independent expert. Once you do that, I respond, and I will broaden my response to cover all the communities we have discussed here, which demand self-determination. At the same time, I will then request to meet with the permanent delegation of Sri Lanka to the UN, because you have created an opening for me. I will then meet with the permanent delegation of Sri Lanka to the UN. I will raise all these issues of referendum and ask what progress they have made. Then I will then get back to you when we interact further on what responses I got. So that is the immediate action I'll be engaged. I can promise. And I'm speaking from past experience, because in the previous 3 reports, there were issues concerning particular states. And when I raised them, the delegations of those countries requested to meet with me. Among those has been Venezuela, Qatar, Philippines, Iran, and so many of them. And I have held sessions with them. And I've raised particular issues for their home countries to address. And I am aware that some work is going on back home. Some had the opportunity to invite me to their capitals. Before COVID struck, I had the opportunity to visit some of these countries for further investigation and engagement. So at a very tactical level, this is how we can bring this issue forward, using the opportunity at hand to make inroads and along the way reach out to the government delegation and then ensure that the discussion continues. So I will then relay after the session what we have agreed upon. So Mr. Yogi, that is how I intend in the very near future to raise the issue. But on a long-term basis, I'm going to take advantage of all these opportunities we have identified and possibilities like what Bosco has raised, what Jesse has raised. I'll take advantage of them. But again, I must emphasize the importance of these webinars and the necessity to widen the debate, to bring in as many stakeholders so that we drum up this issue beyond just one community or one nation. Because the more we make it a global issue, the more it gains traction. The more it is a one nation issue, the less attention we get. But the more we make it a global issue, the more it gains global traction and the possibility. You see, maybe let me mention this. For our reports, we are always guided by the Human Rights Council and General Assembly resolution. The subject of my report now is actually a decision of the recent session of the General Assembly and the Human Rights Council. So I need to elevate this issue to a degree where the General Assembly and the Human Rights Council can mandate me in the next report to address this. So if we don't gain this traction, it's also possible that I may not be able to address this in the next report, because all our reports are dictated by the Council resolution and the GA resolution. And apparently, if it is raised, then when they make the resolution, they are likely to say, because of the importance of this, we invite the independent expert for the next report to address this. And then there is an opportunity, Bosco, there is an opportunity, all of you, to create pressure for me to be invited to Sri Lanka, to be invited to southern Cameroon, to be invited to Yemen, because I need sometimes to do an independent investigation into the issue in the country at hand and bring it out, because we have these opportunities. Of course, before COVID struck, we were able to make physical visits to many of these countries. So if I make a visit to Sri Lanka, I can then revive the debate around the resolution as well. That's also another opportunity. So if I'm going to focus on the right self-determination, then I would be obliged to carry out a visit to Sri Lanka or to whichever country, or Yemen or Armenia or whatever, and do a deeper investigation, because I have realized that when you do a country visit, it gains more momentum, because the country has to, the state in question has to defend itself. So then I raise again the issues of referendum and so on, which have been sometimes maybe sidelined. So these are avenues which we can use in order to gain more prominence. That's what I can say, Yogi. But again, it's a collective effort. It's a struggle. It's an ongoing struggle. And together, we can win.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Livingston. very patiently you answered all the questions raised by the participants. Really, I admire your patience and your what do you call it, your articulations. Really, thanks a lot, because almost more than 3 hours you have been listening and you have been talking and you are answering all the questions. It's a marvelous job you are done, and really it is encouraging us. So your support, your words of appreciation, and the words of involvement, the act of involvement, really makes us get to know better. Still we need to further proceed. So that's why you are supporting us. You are there to make us to work hard still further. And really it is you are our source of inspiration. So therefore,
you're most welcome.
You are done a good job. Therefore, I also thank all the people who raised the questions, because they have been actively participating. Therefore, they raised they are very interesting and informative questions they have raised. So thanks all the people who have raised the questions. Now I request Mr. Bosco to thank all the speakers as well as the participants. And now over to Mr. Bosco. Thank you. The international organizer of the Global Tamil Movement. So living in France. So over to.
Thank you, Father. Really, I think it was really very fructify meeting. And first, I start to thank, of course, by the speakers list. So really, Omema, really thank you. Whenever we ask you, you are here, and it's really an honor. And then also we have Professor Dr. Paul Niemann. He's also, whenever we ask, he's there, and he's also a very strong supporter for all the people who are seeking for their right to self-determination. And Nadia Hafed, thank you very much. And it was really very good presentation. And I hope we can do more other events like this. And Lydia, also, thank you very much. And I hope that many people know about the issue of Armenia Occidental now. I mean, sorry. And also Prince Ebichu, George, I have also your presentation, so I will definitely send to the special reporter. And also, please, all the speakers who make their presentation, feel free send us your intervention. Then we can make a small booklet, and also to send all the special procurement holders, and also to the countries. And also, really very thanks to our Honorable Prime Minister and Rutrana. Really very thank for your presentation. And I hope that we can also have an individual meeting with you, because you have a lot of information regarding Tamil issues. So that's why it's very important for us to have a separate meeting with you. And we have Clara Serra and Leila Mohammed. They had some issues, so they didn't. They didn't connect themselves. And Gada Al Ryan from Palestine. Really, thank you also, because we meet about 7 years ago. And finally, thanks a lot to our guest speaker, Dr. Livingston. It's really an honor, and I think everyone thanked you, so I can do more. It was really very interesting. I hope to do the same on the beginning of the September, so we can have another meeting before the session. So we can talk about it later. And also, I thank also Nisha Paris, who make the welcome speech. And also, I thank a lot Father Kulandasamy for his moderation. It was really perfect. And also,